Hey Nerd Union, it's Commander Shipp and Tom DeGroh with another episode of the Commander Shipp Show. We'll cover how the Oscars just shot our Sonic award dreams all to hell. We'll have some fun with some memorable what-if scenarios in movie history and some Marvel cinematic history, along with settling finally whether or not Zack Snyder deserves our praise, punishment, or maybe some combination of the two. All of that and more starting now. Do it. Hey everyone, we're back and ready to kick off this show. It's been a really productive, well, we'll see. We got a lot of content to come out the next couple of weeks, so I've been pretty swamped. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing all right. Feeling good in this stormy day.
Yeah. Folks, we didn't want to push the recording back, so we're still going to try to soldier through today. And I will be doing our best to control our mics and not let any of that seep through. It's like, we're working on soundproofing, but our rooms are not 100% there yet. So
mine's all windows. So enjoy the ambiance of a thunderstorm as we tell our stories.
Yeah, just embrace it. But like we kick off every show, we're going to go right into the quick hits so that we can get to our main topic of the not the MCU. Don't kill me, DC fans.
No.
We're going to give the DCEU its just due. It's kicking it off this week with Man of Steel. We did a rewatch this weekend. After this comes out, we definitely would encourage you to go check it out yourself, see if any of our thoughts change your mind, or if you're still like, nope, completely love it or hate it. But hopefully this will open up a conversation we can continue on throughout the weeks, and I think this is a really good time before Wonder Woman 1984 comes out in August. So but quick hits. I said our Sonic award dreams have probably been crushed, and the reason being is that Oscar award rules have changed for 2020, meaning that any film that debuts on a digital platform, particularly for this year, will need to have had a planned theatrical release. But assuming that they are unable to do so with COVID-19 going on and theater cancellations, that's not going to disrupt their opportunity to be seen on the award platform or possibly be nominated. And the biggest thing is that the voting members just need to get a copy of the film in that case, just like they normally would anyway, because a lot of times they're going to send them screeners. And also the Golden Globes, which are basically like the little step brother, or little sibling to the Oscars. It's not the crap on the Golden Globes, but it is kind of the crap on the Golden Globes. I'm still looking at you for that comedy category that you gave to The Martian. That's some bull. It's a bunch of malarkey. But very similar rules. I didn't see anything that was really. Their dates are a little bit different as far as the cutoff and start dates, but they're pretty much the exact same thing. And we were that was one of the scenarios we tossed out there a little bit of like this could happen, but now that it's officially set in stone, all of our fantasy scenarios just.
Man, I really wanted Sonic to win an Oscar. I don't like the film. I just wanted it to win an Oscar.
Yeah, I wanted to enjoy the chaos. I wanted the chaos. I think that would have been quite delightful.
Yeah.
This does lend credence to our Netflix. I'm curious what that language is going to mean for future Netflix titles, and I know this is specifically this is a use case for 2020. Netflix would still have to have had a plan to put the movie out in the theater, so I'm not sure how that would work. But I still think this is opening the door for more online distribution acceptance and or like more award recognition for those movies. So
new movie that we learned about today.
Yeah, if you remember The Hitman's Bodyguard, that was starring Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, Salma Hayek, and I'm trying to remember who else was popped up in that movie. It's a fun movie. It's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily hit all the buddy cop quality and goodness that like of like say a Rush Hour or like a Lethal Weapon per se. Like so it gets some of those tropes, but it doesn't necessarily always gel. But I appreciate like it's one of those where like, the trailer was better than what the actual product came out, because I can imagine scenes in that movie better than what actually transpired. But I say all this to say that I'm hoping the sequel that they're making will fix some of the problems they had in the first movie and make a better movie. So the title of this one, though, definitely, I'm assuming this means Salma Hayek's getting upgraded to a bigger role, because it's the hitman's wife's bodyguard. All three of them will be back. I don't know if there's a different bodyguard being added to the movie. So it seems like Ryan Reynolds is just going to assume his role and play the bodyguard again. So like Reynolds is confirmed, Jackson, Hayek, and also Morgan Freeman. Don't know what he's going to be doing.
Narrating.
Yeah, he could narrate it. That'd be hilarious. Not a ton of ideas on the synopsis yet, but I mean from the title you can probably guess. So yeah, I enjoyed parts of it, and it just caught through me because apparently it was supposed to release in August this year. So it's very surprising to see that sneak through, get through my radar, and also whether production is still on schedule for that, considering how many things have been shut down. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some update where this gets completely moved off somewhere else.
I hate to say it was very forgetful for me. I attempted it once, and something far more interesting and shiny came about. Second time, I can hardly remember most of the points, except for I did enjoy Ryan Reynolds at the beginning, playing kind of an anal retentive bodyguard that loses everything. So I did kind of appreciate that, because usually he's just a slacker who gets lucky. This time around, they kind of showed him being somebody planning ahead. So, him stretching as an actor.
Oh, come on now. You're right. Wait, would you consider Deadpool a slacker? Because he had a plan for how he wanted to get Francis.
A bit. Yeah. I'll have to think about that one, honestly, because I think that he was a lot of it was luck. And a lot of
I don't disagree with you on that.
The luck of his skill as well. Like it. He basically was. He pulled a shoot in the car chase / shootout scene when he finally runs into Colossus. It's kind of I've only got 11 shots or 12 shots. Gonna make them count. And just does it, as opposed to having a plan to make it work.
But he had to be accurate, Tom. And also, they were facing budget constraints. Ergo,
True.
the bag of guns getting left every single time. Which I feel like that's a clever usage. So.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
But I'm kind of interested to see how this plans out. I'm lukewarm to it. I like Ryan Reynolds getting work. He's got to do something to support his gin business. And
hey, I think the gin business is doing pretty good. I think
so.
I was also going to say, like, you think he was a slacker in Green Lantern? Did we see?
Yes, that's the whole purpose of Hal Jordan. He was a slacker, fly by the seat of his pants.
He's just a maverick. What are you talking about? How can you be lazy when you're a maverick? Put your life on the line for the tests.
Exactly. So yeah, I think he and Van Wilder, when he finds out he's broke, he takes his last $7 to a strip club.
Like any good American, that's right.
Yes. Yep.
All right, we're gonna move on to the weirdest one of the day, which it. So I had to reread it twice because I was like, so Cinema Blend pushed out a story that involves Michael Jackson's nephew Taj confirming a rumor from a while back of Michael Jackson really being interested in playing Spider-Man, which is I'm glad that didn't happen because that would have been an odd casting for sure. Yes. I'm so very thankful that didn't happen. And people make fun of Tobey Maguire. I'm like, no, this would have been awful. But because Michael Jackson was very known for buying up people's catalogs. So if you don't know, like he bought McCarthy's the rights to his music, bought his discography, and done that for a bunch of different artists. He was there was a serious conversation, not like there was a serious conversation, given what was going on with Marvel in the 90s, of buying them that would help get them out of the issues they were facing during that time, and also secure all the rights together. So the reason that perked my ears up, thinking about the current state of MCU, and while yes, Disney, it doesn't mean that Disney owns it now and they've got most control of their properties. Obviously, Spider-Man is still with Sony, but that's the one that I know is part of the bane of Kevin Feige's existence, whether he'll actually say it in press conferences or not. You can see it most of the time when he's on stage with Amy Pascal, the Sony exec that runs their side of the house, because every conversation's pained, and or she releases a detail too soon that they weren't ready to talk about. On top of making the Spider-Verse a thing, and I'm not again, every time I say it, I'm not talking about Miles Morales. I love the Into the Spider-Verse. I'm talking about making the Spider-Man universe a full-fledged thing with Venom and Morbius and all that. So it's interesting. The alternate history for me is holy crap, we could have. Well, yes, it would have come attached to a Michael Jackson Spider-Man, but if Spider-Man was going to get rebooted anyway, right? So so just walk with me on this for a second. So Michael Jackson makes a Spider-Man, buys Marvel, they saves him from bankruptcy. Spider-Man movie gets made where he's the star of Spider-Man. Maybe hopefully that'll get shot down, but say it wasn't. Yeah, it's probably a terrible movie, probably an awful movie. But all the properties are together. Even if you have to reboot Spider-Man, all the properties are together. And if Kevin Feige still comes in at some point and he's still that dude, that changes everything.
I'm not 100% solid on the timeline, but Blade saved Marvel, possibly from Michael Jackson. If it weren't for the success of Blade and Blade 2.
Oh, okay.
Blade 3.
No, I'm not saying that. Okay, let me back up. Yes, I agree that saved Marvel and doesn't get nearly the amount of credit that it should have.
Yes,
and I could make an outside argument that the Spider-Man X-Men movies, them getting optioned out so that they could get some cash flow and some generation from the movie side of the house for the Marvel Studios brand, definitely helped as well going after that point. I feel like a cash infusion in the 90s, before you get to that point where you have to start early 90s before you have to start selling that stuff off, again, maybe you still do Blade and it still allows you to have that success that you're able to build off of. And then if you're still we're going to create these Spider-Man movies in the 2000s and the X-Men movies in the early 2000s, but then it's yours. So Blade could still be the financial hero that happens there, and then Spider-Man, X-Men all happens to you. It's not money going off to Fox or Columbia Pictures at that time, now Sony. That's in conjunction together. But I feel like that's a much different track than what we're currently on, and I still see problems coming ahead with the Spider-Man MCU partnership.
Honestly, Spider-Man is a huge part of Marvel. Spider-Man alone is probably 25% or 20% of Marvel, as far as recognition, etc. Um, I'm going to throw out an alternate timeline doomsday scenario for you, though.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So,
Hit me.
All right. Michael Jackson secures Marvel. He somehow convinces them to let a near 50-year-old man play Spider-Man. So that's going to flop, and that's going to basically laugh Marvel out of films, period. And then what's going to happen is Tom Cruise is going to sit there and say, hey, I do have an option out for Iron Man. I'll work with you guys on Iron Man. And now Tom Cruise is Iron Man 5 years or 6 years earlier. And an Iron Man that doesn't have a mask, because you got to see that it's Tom Cruise in the suit. Because that was actually one of his stipulations when he was optioning out Iron Man.
Okay, so first of all, no, I'm agreeing that a Michael Jackson Spider-Man is going to flop. I just don't think it's going to matter so long as it happens in the 90s. Well, and I wasn't clear on that, so yeah, you know what, because I still said Michael Jackson 2000s, or sorry, I said X-Men and Spider-Man still happened in 2000 and Blade happened at its, all right, so for this alternate timeline to work, for the 1 out of 14 million that Doctor Strange saw, like, Jackson acquires it, does a flop Spider-Man in the 90s when everyone thinks superhero movies are dumb anyway after Batman and Robin. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, like, if he did it at the same time, but even still, like, that just is...
I think it would be okay. I think it would be all right. And then you come back to the table 4 years later in, like, the 2002, 2003, and come out with something really stellar.
I mean,
and again,
to me, Michael Jackson...
Oh, go ahead.
Michael Jackson playing Spider-Man is makes about as much sense as Betty White playing Thor.
No, I agree with you. I want to be clear. I'm not advocating for its goodness. It would be awful.
I honestly think. I think that there would be no coming back, or it would either prolong or skew Marvel in such a direction of chaos afterwards that it just as terrible as this timeline is, this is the best timeline for Marvel right now.
All right. So you're saying it's so bad that they couldn't overcome nipples on a suit?
I mean, that was DC, and look what's happened to DC.
I mean, they got better. They also just chose to shoot themselves in the foot again. So let's be clear. Nolan gave them a new a new universe on a silver platter, and people would say like, "Well, you can't really build off the Batman." No, that's not what I'm talking about. Prominence. He at least brought you back to prominence. You chose to squander that, but he can't be held to that. Like, you didn't ask him to craft a universe. He's like, I made you 3 solid movies. I made you over $1 billion, almost $2 billion. So if you messed that up, that's on you. That's all I'm saying, is that get the cash infusion, make the dumb movie, even if you have to bide your time for a couple years, but at least you bide your time. Maybe pick a different property. You let Spider-Man sit on the shelf for a little bit. It's like, all right, we'll go tackle the X-Men or some shit for a little bit. And then once you like reestablish your footing, then you're good. Like, it's gonna be a hit, but I'd rather get the money and then take the perception hit that I can fix later, as opposed to this chaos scenario that is still coming down the pipe. If you people, you people.
What do you mean?
If you people think that there's not going to be another ticking time bomb with Spider-Man after what just happened, no, it's going to happen. There's going to be another fight, and this time,
yeah. No, I don't disagree with you that there will be another fight, but the reality is that Sony's pregnant with this Spider-Man universe, and that's really an outdated term, but you know they've got to deal with it right now, because I have a feeling that, and we saw hints of this, that if Sony just pulls out of the Marvel universe, Tom Holland's done. He'll find something else.
Yeah.
And then they're at square one again, and they're going to have to find somebody who's not going to be as good as Tom Holland. And then all they'll have is frickin' Venom, which nobody cares about. And
Carnage. They're going to fight Carnage, and it's going to be Black versus Red.
Yeah.
At least it'll be more distinguishable on screen, I hope.
Yeah, I think that Sony knows that they're stuck, and they lose a lot of the best writing. They lose the best character development that they've had in a Sony Marvel film in 2 decades. Yeah, there's just no hope for them to get away with this without making some serious losses. They're more likely making a play to sell.
See, that's and all right. I don't want to spend. We'll move. I don't want to get the other quick hits wrapped up, but
Yeah,
I will say I'll leave it at this. The bringing Spider-Man into Civil War was the single dumbest mistake that MCU has made so far. And there's some other ones that are minor, but to me that's the biggest and dumbest one I can identify, because at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, like, it was probably the closest they were to potentially giving it up. And the reason, the reason I would disagree with you on priming it to sell, I mean, could they hold Disney over a barrel with the cost, and probably had the highest we've ever seen someone pay for one individual character in his universe, his rogues gallery? Yeah, but I think that was going to happen at Amazing Spider-Man regardless. Now that he's making almost close to, I forgot what, Far From Home was insane this past summer. Even with Endgame having the numbers it did, Far From Home still did very well. And it's like they can almost do no wrong and still pump out money on Spider-Man. Like, so there's I wonder if Sony just sees an infallibility with, well, even when we screw up and make Spider-Man free, like, we still make a crap ton of money. So what's the real, at the end of the day, what's really the big deal?
well, because Sony knows how the sausage was made. Because Sony knows that it was Marvel writing. I mean, I don't know if you saw that, but I saw it. That movie was 90% Marvel.
Oh yeah, 10%
Sony. And yet you're right. That was a risky play for Civil War to have Spider-Man in that. But I think it played out, and it's given Marvel more business leverage against Sony.
No, I disagree. I think Sony was at the lowest point they could be, that you could acquire them, and then you gave more life into that. Disney may have the leverage as far as I'm not disagreeing with that. Okay, let me. And I know we need to move. So, I'm not disagreeing. They have leverage. I just think their leverage was stronger when Sony also didn't have anything to actually gain from keeping Spider-Man. Because at that point, it was actually, while Amazing Spider-Man 2 still made money, it wasn't the printing machine that it was compared to the first three of Tobey Maguire, and they're starting to see diminished returns. And that, I think, is when there's a prime opportunity to go in and try to scoop it back up. Even if you have to do like a Star Wars overpay to get it, it's like you could do it at that point. And I just don't know if the leverage is the same now. They have leverage. They have the writing. They have the team. They have the production crew, and so on and so forth. But I just don't know if it's the same now.
We'll see. I mean, I think the play will be Marvel. They'll fight again. Marvel will say, we're out. You guys can make your own Spider-Man. And they either have to use it or lose it within the next 3 years, I think, 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to produce a film. It's going to suck. It's going to be Fantastic Four all over again, and Sony will learn its lesson.
Oh no! Well, things that are. Let's talk about things that. God.
So yeah, let's move on to another universe.
Another universe, at least be brighter to a degree. Well, maybe. So Rick and Morty season 4.
Season 5.
Season 5? What? No, it's still season 4.
Oh, it's still season 4. So
because they split it up. Because they had 5 the first half, or 5 in 2019, and then they got 5. They're pulling a community. So we would normally put this in the What to Watch this weekend, but we just want to talk real quick. Rick and Morty season 4, the spring premiere. So this is the last 5 episodes of the season 4 are out May 3rd, 11:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm quite the Rick and Morty fan, although yes, if if I need to put the caveats on it, yes, I realize the toxicity of Mort, or sorry, not Mort, of Rick.
Well, yes, Morty,
Morty too. He's coming. He's been gross, but he's becoming a little monster in his own right. And I do not hero worship Rick in any sense. I just like the comedic elements and the conversation that it brings up, because it does bring up some really interesting conversations. So yeah, we'll get the last half of that. Seems like that trailer was bananas. Seems like some of the things we've been waiting for to happen are finally going to happen in these last 5 episodes. Unless Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon are screwing with us, and they're like, we made a fake sizzle reel. Because I would not put it past them.
Yeah, that's never happened with them at all. They've never messed with fans.
So I haven't done any reviews for Rick and Morty, and I'm probably not going to start now, but I will probably next week. I'll give you my impression of that episode. Try to keep it spoiler free. So definitely let me know if you're watching that this weekend. Let us know that on the Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you prefer to comment on. And if you really do want something out on that, or like to see my opinion on it, let us know. We'll knock it out. Yep. Our last quick hit is basically my condemnation on the Sonic universe, and we've talked about movie multiverses, or not multiverse, but just movie cinematic universes for a bit. Sonic doesn't need one.
Nope.
If you want to do a couple movies of Sonic, sure. I mean,
cool.
You did make your money back in a little bit and then some, so okay. And to be fair, it wasn't a dumpster fire we all thought it was going to be. It's still not a good movie, but it's watchable. If you're some diehard Sonic fan, I know you're out there, and you like it, fine, cool. But a cinematic universe, like if Shadow and Knuckles get their own, if I swear to God, if there's a Tails movie, that's gonna be my line. You will not hear the end of it.
And it is nonplussed by most things, but a Tails movie.
It's like, that's drive me up the wall.
That's when he's going to the gun shop.
Goodness. So, gosh. Because the director recently was talking about bringing in more iconic characters, and I'm fine with that in a sequel. That's cool, because yes, you do want to see the other. You want to see Tails, you want to see Knuckles, you want to see Shadow, Metal Sonic, maybe even, like, cool. But if that means spin-off movies, stop in your tracks. Just pop.
Yeah, there's not enough.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the numbers will show that too.
Yeah. Well, we are ready with that segue. We are ready for our main topic. We've been hinting at it for the last couple of weeks, and we put our brains together to think about, because it could just be us trashing Batman vs Superman. It could just be talking about this mystical or a director's cut for Justice League. But what we decided to do, because I was also going back and looking through, like, because our website started after Man of Steel came out, I never actually got to write a review for it. I mean, I've given my thoughts on it, but I never actually got to write one up. Let's see, one of our other writers was a huge Wonder Woman fan, so she wrote the review for Wonder Woman, so I didn't actually get to do that either. Like, we talked about it and planned that review, but she wrote it, and I never actually got my thoughts out there. On top of, like, just kind of paging where the DCEU is right now. So with not a lot of summer movies coming out, and really want to give it a fair shake, right? Because we could just be like, write it off completely and be like, this is never going to fix itself. But we wanted to give it a fair shake. We're going to go through the whole DCEU, and today we are kicking off with Man of Steel.
Yes. And by the way, just for clarification, I'm sure we don't need to say this among the nerds, but DCEU is Snyder movies on. These don't necessarily include Nolan films.
So this will not include Nolan films, although I do have a Nolan comment, and something I'm going to have to dive into more. I started it, wasn't ready for it in time for this podcast, but I'm either going to write an article or bring it up in one of these episodes about Christopher and Jonathan Nolan's influence on these movies, because I I still think it's questionable. So
Yes, I think they were just producers in name only.
yeah, we're starting with Man of Steel, and I'm so let me. I do want to talk about my thoughts of it before we get. I think it'd be useful to think about what we thought about it before, and then did anything change? So I remember having a lot of really. If I can just sum it up in a couple words, I was really conflicted. I remember our team on Nerd Union talked about the Zod head snap forever and a day. Like it was like we were arguing back and forth. Like I don't think it was a good idea, but like some of it made like it was a struggle there. The Pa Kent sacrifice, and this was like it was a constant over and over again. I'm not even a huge animal lover, so like for me there was nothing attached to me happening in that scene. It's not like please understand, it's not that I don't care about animals. Like they should be respected, or so they should be treated humanely and anything like that. But my thing was like you went back to get the dog and then you died. That's how you died. Like, or that's how Superman's dad died. That sentence doesn't.
Yeah.
That sentence doesn't resonate well with me.
I'll have more thoughts later on that because I continue to have these thoughts as well.
Yeah.
I just remember being really excited about it because the Superman Returns was a nice snack, but it wasn't satisfying.
Have you rewatched that recently?
Not in a couple of years.
Man, it's boring. Man, it's just nothing.
And it's actually so maddening too because they have all these great things in spite of recent events. Kevin Spacey playing Lex Luthor, that should have just been a knockout of the park in itself. They had so many amazing actors playing roles in this that, I mean, I don't know. I just don't understand why it was so
that
bad.
moment when he screams out, like, say it, Lois is, he's kind of egging her on to say that Superman's going to save them. He's just, because it's probably a line he's heard hundreds of times up to that point. And be like, yeah. I know how this goes. Go ahead, say it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Which,
but I was super excited about this. Like, wait, Nolan's producing this? Awesome. The guy who did 300 is doing the photography? Cool. I had no idea at the time that Snyder was doing the writing as well. And when I first saw the film, a lot of the things that most people were upset about, I was kind of okay with. The destruction porn was eye-rolling, in Metropolis, but I'm like, it's his first day on the job. And he's fighting somebody as powerful as him.
It's like that may not go well. It's like that's
yeah. There were a couple of other things, but there was a whole bunch of stuff that put an itch in my brain that I could not scratch, and honestly, most of them are still there. And I'm ready to go down that path chronologically with you if you are.
Go right on ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to say something positive.
Yeah, let's get into the positives. Yeah.
One, I actually like how they did Krypton technology. With one caveat, it was dingy as hell on Krypton. I don't know. I mean, there was this. I get it. Nolan is like every other emotional, I can't say the F word, fun boy out there that thinks like darkness and sadness is deep or something along those lines. But
wait.
He threw that aesthetic out there.
Are you trying to say that like Nolan's darkness is fake? Is that the connotation?
No.
Emulating.
And Nolan actually.
Oh, go ahead.
I think so. I think that like sadness and anger are a trope and a crutch that people use when they cannot create a deep and thoughtful script. And that was accentuated by Snyder's choices of color palette for Man of Steel. He's all right. So Krypton, instead of being this bright, shiny thing that explodes. It's now this dingy factory cave looking thing with a bunch of advanced technology that all looks like it hasn't been cleaned in 50 years. And some of the choices were okay, but I think like the idea of Krypton's flawed society, how they executed a lot of the technology, was pretty good. Some of the design was a little bit problematic early on, at least.
Yeah. So we're gonna get to one like so. If the idea is like they're aliens, then they're not supposed to look like us. And I know sometimes science fiction there's a great series on Space Doc where he's like, most alien ships look like crap. And I'm like, there's like they gotta incorporate some other like so. But if that's the standard that's there in sci-fi, then for this version of it, it's not bad. Like
no,
so the ships look cool. You can kind of tell which ones do which purposes. Like what's a scout, like kind of mini ship, what's a carrier, or and then again the world engines they use later on in the film. So like each kind of has a very distinct visual style, and then how that overall aesthetic. Again, if you could lighten it up a little bit, where it's not all completely dark, would have been more appreciated. But yeah, there's some weird decisions. Like the armor's interesting. There's the space penises that happen.
Yep.
You probably don't know what we're talking about. I'll throw a photo up on the on this when you're watching this at home. If you're watching this on YouTube, when Zod and his rest of his crew gets imprisoned in the Phantom Zone, there's that ice layer that covers over them. It's like, okay, that's fine. But they went to alien design a little too far because the capsules are, and this is not just trying to make a phallic joke because there's a shaft and a hole attached.
Yes, and a head with
which design wise is like, why did you put that on the top of? I honestly,
my high school anatomy book is basically what I see.
Yeah, so this is not a stretch of the imagination. So that was a very poor design choice. I want to say I giggled in the theater. I don't know if that's true. I don't know for sure, but I have definitely giggled every time that moment comes up afterwards.
Yep.
It's just very. It's very.
Yeah, my thought this time around was, you going to act like a bunch of dicks? We're going to send you up to jail in a bunch of dicks. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I can't imagine, whoever designed the prison cocoons looked at them and said, "Yeah, I don't see how this resembles anything else."
Yeah, it's weird.
Cool.
It's weird. It's very weird.
I mean, it felt super juvenile, and that's I think one of the running themes that I have through my head is that there's a lot of juvenile behavior throughout the entire film. A couple of other things about Krypton, though, that I found interesting was the purely cloned society that they had. The fact that Kal-El was born naturally and was a heresy.
Is
kind of interesting as well.
Yeah.
Yep. And also the fact that they set the stage, Michael Shannon, who is just I've been a fan of his since I saw him in Boardwalk Empire, and I was so happy that he got cast as Zod.
Yeah.
And I'll continue to sing his praises throughout this entire thing, I'm sure.
Because he's bringing it. Because he's bringing it the entire time.
Yeah.
Like, there's no doubt what Zod is about. He's very clear about what he wants. And then, like, obviously, Shannon's delivery with that, with the exception of maybe one where he's a little over the top, where he's like, "I will find Kal-El," and he like belts it out a little bit there at the end. I almost wish it hadn't taken so long to build to it, because he says it so many times and then finally says it. So I think the moment's still great. It's like, okay, so not to nitpick that, because that'd be a whole nother thing. But it's just one moment of his out of the entire film that just stood out as a little, like, that might have been a little bit too much. But overall, just really good villain. We don't get a ton of good villains all the time. Like, think about how many the MCU kills off, or and DC's getting, as we get more villains, they're probably going to start being bad about that as well. So, and I can get to a longer thing of, like, should you keep killing your villains off and not, so that you don't even have a gallery to go back into? It's like, I would say keep some of them around so that you have some opportunity. You know, you can make that decision into the future. But, you know, what do I know?
So, yeah, let's get out of Krypton, like, because that was okay.
Yeah, Krypton's not bad. Maybe a little shorter, but it's not bad.
So I will throw out one of the issues that I had with that party, or with that with the Krypton concept, especially the clone concept, was that codex. And I feel like they put like Snyder was just piling it on with, you know, not only is he the last son of Krypton, but he's also carrying all the DNA of every Kryptonian to ever exist. And, you know, him being the last son of Krypton alone can be one of the keys for the survival of his species. But no, they had to throw on this other thing that really does nothing to add to the gravity naturally to the story.
I mean, if you're going to change, so I think it's just a matter of where you put it at, because you could take it away from Kal-El and just be a thing that is naturally in those birthing chambers and stuff, right? So you could just make a movie change and be like, there's a codex in the birthing chamber. So then it's still head to head about Clark making a choice of what he wants to do, and Zod making his choice of, no, I'm going to use this planet to terraform and rebuild our race, and Clark trying to make a decision of, am I going to be a bridge between our race, or am I going to have to also, and then if I make that choice, this means I'm also canceling out the choice that Zod wants to do. So you could still have a codex, have the codex exist and not have it happen inside of Clark, and still have that function well within the movie. It'd be a very small tweak, and he'd still be important. He'd still be the last. At that time, what he fought, the last son of Krypton, and still have an importance of to your degree of like not adding an extra detail on, and still have a conversation on choice.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's flash forward to one of the things I found kind of interesting about the choice that Snyder made that was somewhat good, was he interspersed today with the past. He didn't quite make a 100% origin story. He created an emergence story instead. So I think that's okay. But even still, I feel like an emergent story is unnecessary. I've been in like remote jungles in Southeast Asia wearing a Superman shirt, and everybody knows who Superman is. You don't need to retell his story. And every time people try and retell a good origin story, every time people try, thank God the Marvel Spider-Man didn't try and retell that story. It's just, here's Spider-Man. You guys know who he is and what he's about, and here's his story. And that, they don't need to retell Superman's story, because every time they redo it, they always screw it up. Somebody tries to put on their own stank, and it just completely screws up the story, in my opinion.
Well, I mean,
and those are some of the things I'm going to get into.
Okay, but
with fervor. But
cinematically, who has really redone Superman's story, though? This really is the first. This is really the first film version that has done that. Now, if we're talking about, and again, Spider-Man, obviously, they've done it twice, and then it's a matter of like, well, don't do it a third time, which I think was wise, and not doing that in Homecoming. So I still agree with your like pop culture, like people know the story beads for Superman. His story beads, even if you're not talking about like an alien kid dropping on an alien planet to him, some of those story beads is his hero story. Again, you can talk about Joseph Campbell and the whole archetype there, but I'd say Superman's been the basis for still a lot of other superheroes. So that you're right, that a reemergence is more important than going hitting those beads again, because a lot of his beads have been borrowed or retold across, and that might be maybe that's a stronger idea. It's like his story and idea has been retold in different facets and ideas than even Spider-Man. Even if technically this would be the first time he's been like rebooted or had a rebooted origin.
In a cinematic thing, I think part of the reason why I was tired with the idea was because Man of Steel came out in 2013, which was 2 years after the last season of Smallville.
yeah.
And DC spent 10 years, in my opinion, well executing an origin story of Superman, and and it would have been great if Snyder basically looked at Smallville and said, okay, they had the rule, no flights, no tights. Cool. Now we get to show the tights and the flights. Let's leave that story of Smallville there and then show him becoming who he's supposed to be. But again, I don't think Snyder is one to collaborate as much as he is to just make his own story.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I want to talk about the Pa Kent scenes for a moment. And I know we can go in order, but and maybe we'll touch on them again as we're going down through. But so in this viewing, and even I think about viewings before this point, but recent viewings, I don't hate it as much anymore. The tornado scene where he dies is still very dumb.
Yes.
But, and I was talking to you before we started that the idea of choice really stood out to me a lot more than it did before. And even the bus scene, I feel like once I got past my anger of like, who is this Pa Kent? Re-listening to that sounds a lot different than it did when I first was in the theater. Because now it reads a lot more of like, I want to be honest with you, son, because I don't know. Because let's be clear, he doesn't say no, you shouldn't have said. No, that's not what came out of his mouth. He just said maybe. He's admitting the difficulty and like I'm a human father to an alien child, and that's a little weird, and I don't have all the answers for that. That's even the bickering that happens in the car before the tornado when Clark's kind of getting upset of his dad. He's like, man, you're not even my real dad, which is a very teenage outburst to happen. You're not my real dad.
That was also really unnecessary. Like
it was unnecessary. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think it's hammering home the idea of like this is not an easy thing to figure out, because these are definitely conversations that didn't happen in the original movie to this degree. And I think if you're going to modernize Superman and bring him into the 2000s and have that conversation, people were going to want to know, like, how did he deal with that? How did Ma Kent deal with that? So the maybe to me is not necessarily bad, and especially since he wants to protect his son's choice in the future and his chance of being accepted by society.
Yeah, see, and that's where I'm going to latch onto that statement that you just made. Is that is not a 21st century attitude, though. That is to me Snyder showing everybody that he's still stuck in the past. I don't know, maybe, but if he said, I know it's wrong, but I want to say maybe, making it about Pa Kent being afraid to lose his son to his powers, and that's something that I think could have been a deeper conversation.
Keep going.
So, like, I mean, and actually, Ma Kent touches a little bit about that, where she talks about how she's afraid, and I don't know if I can't remember if it was Man of Steel or later, because I watched all of them kind of one day after another, and they're all blurring together right now. Okay. But Ma Kent does talk about the fact that she's afraid of losing her son to the world, but also knowing that because of his abilities, it's he needs to do this, and she needs to just buck up and deal with it.
Okay.
And that's the thing is, like, I feel like again, Snyder has a lack of nuance in everything that he does, and I don't think he had the ability. The I don't know maybe was Costner's best option to throw in a little bit of nuance into
Okay, all right. I gotta pump the brakes for a second, because
Okay. All right.
that scene the immediate scene after that is the shuttle conversation, and the thing out of Clark's mouth is, "Can I just go back to being your son?" When he finally gives him more details on like what happened, and the hug that happens immediately after that of like, of course you're still my son. Like, I feel like that's communicating a lot of the fear that Pa Kent has, even if it's not complete words, right? Because again, they are doing what I always want. Is like, show me, don't tell me. It's like, dialogue is important, but there's sometimes you need to just show me and not tell me. And it's like after you just had that conversation, an immediate thing of like, I'm being honest with you, so I'm going to also be as frank with you as I can. Let me lay out all the cards on what I know and bring this out to you. Like, I think that spoke a lot of volumes for Pa Kent moving forward. That's all. And I agree with your nuanced conversation in other parts of the movie. We're probably going to be like 100% agreed on nuance that's not followed elsewhere in the movie. But this scene, again, if you... It's not trying to sway you. I just want to put my full
No, it's I just think that there could have been a better way of showing the conflict within Pa Kent, other than saying, "Yeah, let them die."
He didn't say that. Come on.
But yes, okay. He said maybe let them die. I mean, he literally put into Clark's head that his existence is more important than, his freedom as some Kansas country boy is more important than saving the lives of all those people in that bus.
Okay, but let me throw one more scenario out there, and this is also something that Pa Kent brings up as well, is that your existence, or when people find out about you, it's going to shake up a lot of things that we previously believed or held, right? So it's kind of like, you think about all the like Stargate, SG-1, or Men in Black, where some of the government knows that aliens exist, but they don't tell it to the rest of the public for fear of what would happen. Or I think there is some legitimate concern of what is his existence going to impact the people around him. So there's a fear of what would happen to Clark, but there could also be a fear of what is your existence going to do to them. They're going to start worshiping you as a savior. Is there potential that his existence is going to collapse some religions, now that his from his mere existence? So I think there is like a larger, like, again, he's trying to protect Clark, but maybe he's also trying to protect the public when he makes those comments. Is the sacrifice of a couple kids on a bus worth it to make sure the world doesn't freak the fuck out and do worse things to each other because aliens do exist, and potentially invalidate some other held ideas?
And maybe I'm being unfair to this. Part of the problem is that there's so much material out there. Because, like, when I think about Pa Kent, and I think about Kevin Costner playing it, and I think about John Schneider of Dukes of Hazzard fame playing it.
Those direct comparisons, yeah.
It's this Snyder Kent, Pa Kent, falls way short. Now, granted, they had 3 seasons of Pa Kent in Smallville to work through, and to grow that character and to develop some nuance and kind of hammer home some of these messages. But the reality is that even if you compare it to 1970s Pa Kent, who was imparting wisdom, other things like that, I still feel like Snyder made, like, those were active choices for him to throw out, I don't know, maybe, as opposed to going in a different direction with that conversation of what Clark should have done.
All right, man.
You're smirking.
I mean, it's a debate, so it's okay. We don't have to agree on that. We don't have to agree on that point. I just want to make sure we're both getting all of our.
True. I'm feeling it out. But that could go. We can move on to that other choice. That other Pa Kent choice.
Yeah, that's still dumb. No matter how much I've become more enlightened and or enjoyed more of it, that's still dumb. Like, and we talked before offline about how we could fix that of to like still respect and because I'm so big on the theme of choice in this movie, I am okay with Pa Kent making that decision. What I'm really not okay with is Clark staying there. I think you should still have it to where he attempts, and you still get the impact of Pa Kent dying, Clark attempting to, and so you throw a couple things in his way of you potentially expose yourself, and you can have some plausible deniability of everything flying around, but you still potentially expose yourself, and maybe it does come back to bite him later in the movie. So maybe that's something that hurt someone. Lois is trying to research, find him in small.
Yeah.
You still respect Pa Kent's decision because he's like, I love you so much, and I want you to have the opportunity to make this choice and find the right time for you to show yourself to the world. That I'm willing to die. That's how much I believe in that. Is I'm willing to die for that choice. It's like, okay, it's like, yeah. But the standing back is what is what I feel like hurts that scene. Even if you still want him to go chase the dog and you still want the tornado to be the thing that happens, if I'm making one tweak, I still have Clark try.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that bothers me about the choice is that I think Snyder, when he was looking at the material, he doesn't understand why Pa Kent dies and the lesson that is supposed to be taught. And I think that's one of the things that still irritates me to this day about the film is that he has things happen that have no consequence, lesson, or other value other than this is a thing to happen that I can film. And I think Pa Kent's death became one of those things in his hands, in that the lesson that Superman is supposed to learn from Pa Kent dying, from his dad dying, is that he has all this power, yet he still can't save one of the people he loves the most in the world. And that is supposed to be one of his sobering and humbling messages as he journeys into Superman. And it's not there. Instead, the lesson is, don't save the people you love because you might get found out as somebody super. And then it became a question of, oh, I now don't care if people find out if I exist or not. And you kind of actually see that a little bit. At least this is from my take watching it again. Is Superman takes action a lot of times when he doesn't care. Like, the trucker is I can't beat this. I can't kill this guy because everyone will see. But now that nobody can see, I'm going to mess up his truck.
Yeah, the truck scene's a little dumb. I don't know if I would say it's that he doesn't care. I would say we don't know. I would argue we don't have enough information to know if he actually cares because he doesn't get to state that. He doesn't get to say it. So you could be completely right that he doesn't care, and I can't really refute you because the movie doesn't really give him an opportunity to, like, we see the choices he's making, which again, coming back to I want you to show me. It's like, that's good, but you do have to tie some conversational thread, tissue. The connective tissue is missing there for us to make those. I have to put blocks in, and if I put the wrong blocks in, I could walk away having a terrible experience with it because what I saw did not lead me to the conclusion that, again, like what you just said, that he cared. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. But I think that's what it's stemming from.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me that, and maybe I'm sounding like some kind of old head, but I would have liked to have seen Clark use his abilities in secret to foil those types of people instead.
And so back to your Smallville comment with Pa Kent, that's what, to me, in my head, when I was in the theater and having watched, I didn't watch all of Smallville because it got too long for me, and I'm like, I can't keep up with this. But even if you watch the first season of Smallville, you've seen him pull off, not necessarily like pranks, but you've seen him be clever. You've seen him figure some things out of, like, I'm testing my powers out a little bit, and maybe I can make this work. Or I bet I could do this and get, So when you come away with seasons of Smallville where he's been doing that, and again, not in costume or anything, but just as regular Clark Kent, and then you watch that scene Like I remember bringing that point up over and over again when it originally came out. Of like, you're killing me having just seen Smallville and then having to watch this, because this is just incongruent with a Superman I've watched for like the last couple of years. It just doesn't work. If because if the audience member can be like, well, couldn't you like quickly run around the back of the overpass and like hide in the shape of the like, you could run a couple of different scenarios of like, maybe this would have worked. You know, it's just so it's kind of like the Star-Lord hitting Thanos, and like, even though Doctor Strange says there's only one way to win, if everyone in the audience is like, okay, but this seems like a pretty obvious problem, why don't you just knock him the fuck out when you get to the scene? And Spider-Man's almost got the gauntlet off, so like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's one of those moments. It's like, it just doesn't, like, I could fix it. I'm not a screenwriter, but you can fix, and if the general audience can fix the scene as they're watching it, you have a problem. That is not good.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that is an underlying theme. Like, watching these films has always made me feel like, oh, I could totally be a script writer, because I've basically fixed all of Snyder's films for him.
And we should be clear, like, for with this movie and other ones going forward, like, hindsight is the benefit of hindsight is great, and obviously what we're doing is not the same as sitting in a room and trying to produce a script. Like, I understand that, but this is, I definitely want to call attention to these kind of moments when they happen, because it's not mind-numbingly dumb when it happens, and it's like,
it pulls you out of the film.
Yeah. I think we probably spoke our piece on Pa Kent, though.
Yes.
In that moment.
Shall we move on to?
Can we talk about Lois Lane for a moment?
Yeah, actually, that was who I was thinking about.
I know some people are like, oh, but it's not going to have the same intrigue or love romance and stuff from the previous. Like, I'm sorry, but Lois Lane not knowing who Clark is has got to be someone that you work with that closely. And yes, I could come up with a few different scenarios of like, and there's been a few different examples of just like, because of how he plays the character, and Christopher Reeves was a master at that, of he plays Clark Kent a specific way and he plays his Superman a specific way to just where you just discount him. You're like, even if you thought past your mind, you look at Clark and be like, no, like, so, and that was the point. That said, it always has hurt Lois as a reporter in my mind, of like, but you couldn't figure that out. Come on. And they make a joke about it, and the Lois and Clark adventures. I forget who goes back in time and is picking on her about it. And he's like, the great Lois Lane couldn't figure it out. Wait, you still don't? Wait, what point in time am I? You still don't know? I'm like, and he's like, yeah. That's never been a great. It's never really been a great. So this movie just getting rid of that and just saying, no, we're gonna move on, and like kind of the Aunt May thing and like Homecoming or like Civil War, like it's done. Like, she knows. Like, all right, cool. I'm good with that. That's probably one of the best changes you've ever made, and it makes her look smarter, reinforces her investigative skills, because when she also tracks him down too, because there's that component of it that's displayed pretty well in the movie. So like, of the changes, I felt like that still held up from when I liked it when I watched it the first time, and even now I still really like that.
The other thing that I thought that was positive about that was that it built trust.
Yes.
It immediately helped them develop trust between each other. When she doesn't immediately say, "Oh yeah, you're Superman, cool. Hey everybody, this yokel in from Kansas is this amazing god on Earth." I think that lends to why he doubles down on Lois Lane as a partner.
Yeah. Because he's still going to choice again. He gets to have the opportunity to turn himself in. So even when she gets captured, it doesn't lead to him immediately having FBI swarm the house. She chooses to keep a secret before that point. Then she gets taken by the FBI and still refuses to say who it is. So his choice is still maintained, and he gets to make he has that church conversation about what to do and stuff. So, and still submits himself to the government to be taken by Zod. So yeah, there was like double reinforcement of like what she's that trust building.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that they did her right. When I first saw the film, I was bothered by how like intertwined they were right away. But second time I watched it, that was there, and that I understood better why they have a bit of a trust is because she had that information she didn't use.
Yeah. Let's see.
So, do we even need to bother about the fight scenes?
They're not super memorable. I mean, there's some one or two like shots or one or two moments I think are kind of cool. I think some of it, while it does look a lot better than Superman 2 fights, so let's just be honest. Like,
yeah.
So if anyone's like, well, they're much better, it was like, don't kid yourself. Like, if I'm talking about what I want to see, it's like this is a lot better. That said, it does lead to like there's this tendency to have the same color palette. So you're talking about what happens on Krypton. All the Kryptonians looking the exact same or having too much of this intricate armor means that I just don't really pick up a lot of their detail. It's kind of like the Transformer problem when it's like, yeah, I'm glad you wanted to emphasize that they were alien, but there's something to be said about sharper lines and blocking that allows us to pick up them on the screen a lot better. I think it's a big reason why the Bumblebee movie, I enjoyed that way more because it's kept some of the alien design from the previous movies, but it made an effort to go back to those classic 80s Transformers designs and like kind of look like a little bit of a Gen 1 style, or actually it would become more of a Gen 1 style Bumblebee. And it's the same thing here. It's like these things are just too much going on. Like if you go to the Zod fight, I'm able to track it a lot better once he pulls the armor off and it's just him wearing that black undersuit fighting Clark. I'm able to pick up a lot more detail of what's going on, but the fight in Smallville is, it's okay. And if we talked before about collateral damage a little bit, and if there's anything we should pull from the fight is that he needed to learn a lesson about collateral. He doesn't really learn it, or probably ever learn it, but if there is a lesson learned, it's not until Batman v Superman, because it was a second thought for Snyder. But if it was going to happen in this movie where he still was careless, I think Smallville is the perfect time to do it. You were careless in your hometown. There may be people there that you know. Like, I think the hit of that is bigger than being in a big city. Of like, you failed in your own hometown. You may have got people hurt that you know and have grown up with, and that town could even like it's probably protected. To be honest, someone probably protected your secret to some degree throughout the years, even if they didn't quite understand what was going on. They're like, oh, it's a miracle from God or something. But to some degree, they've kept your secret as well. Maybe not to the degree Lois has, but there's some of that. And I really liked how Nando v Movies brought that up as a potential change, and I really like it because it moves that story, that hero's progression along in the movie of like, you have a mistake happen, that's fine, but how do you grow from it? And there's just there's no recognition of that in this movie whatsoever.
And actually, if they had that, oh man, would that have been a really good callback to the one of the best speeches that they kept from the original film and put it into Man of Steel was the stumble and fall speech.
Yeah.
Because Superman needs to learn that he is also going to stumble and fall.
Yeah. All right, what you got next?
Yeah, I'm okay with the. I mean, the destruction porn is the destruction porn, but again, first day on the job.
Yeah, he's not going against Lex Luthor right now. This is
no,
like just a lot going on.
I do want to talk about Henry Cavill because I think it's unfortunate that he had Snyder directing him. After seeing him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I've mentioned before, great movie, go see it. I know that he can emote, he can be a character, he can engage, and he can be charming, and all of it was kind of wooden, and I think that was like an attempt to try and make him seem a little more alien, because they tried to do that same thing in Superman Returns, where they made Brandon Routh be a little bit more stiff and a little more alien-ish. But they forget the fact that for all of his conscious life, he's been a Kansas boy. So at best, he's going to get stuck with yes ma'ams too much and or other things like that, as opposed to like being somebody who's trying to fit in and is consciously trying to fit in, as opposed to someone who had fit in most of his life and then, like, with the onset of puberty or whatever, started manifesting different types of powers. And oh, by the way, now you're an alien. Yeah. So all in all, I'm going to probably repeat this a couple times. Snyder should never be allowed to direct and or write another film again. In my opinion, he should be the most sought after cinematographer, period. He makes beautiful scenes. He just has no idea how to connect those scenes into a coherent, valuable storyline. And my feelings are, but the movie wasn't as terrible as I remember it. It's just kind of terrible.
Yeah. So yeah, the overall is still not good. And I don't disagree with the because I don't want to take away some credit from because obviously the cinematographer still has to have a job to do, right? So even if the director is giving guidance on how they want things to be shown a certain way, that cinematographer is still a very important piece in that process. But yeah, writing duties I think should be taken away.
Yes.
And I mean, y'all can get mad at me all you want, but I think it's a very fair assessment. And that'll go back to the Jonathan and Christopher Nolan conversation of it's got to be producer in name. Like I have a hard time with them them giving a good look at the script and saying, oh yeah, that's fine. And or did they think that whatever gaps there were going to be covered? Because there could be a difference in because I have not read the actual screenplay, but there could be a difference in what was on the page compared to like giving it in the hands of Chris Nolan to direct it, as opposed to Snyder or like a Uwe. You go from different, like, and I don't want to say quality, but you go from different types of lenses, and the same screenplay could really look vastly different no matter like what's on the page. Oof, boy. And it was a David S. Goyer screenplay, so I mean, it shouldn't have been. You think it wouldn't have been that off the rails, given how much work he had done with the Batman universe
with Smallville.
And, oh shoot, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that blows me away is that if Goyer's involvement, I was excited about. The only people that would have made me more excited about it would have been Bruce Timm and Paul Dini.
Yeah,
but
which now they have more involvement.
Yep. But in general, I think that a lot of this rests on his shoulders, and I'm going to take a quote from a guy who actually got to be on set for the filming of Justice League, who was a vocal opponent to the Snyder movies so far, and basically, flat out called him and his production team hacks. And they invited him out, which was kind of nice. And Snyder's wife is the one who's also a producer on the films. made the comment of, it seems like we've learned that comic fans don't like their characters deconstructed. And I was thinking about that comment throughout watching all these films, and there's a difference between deconstruction and destruction. And I think that a lot of the elements of what Superman was before Man of Steel are gone in Man of Steel. There's only a hint of the kindness, but again, his kindness, like for example, when he gets arrested, or he's taken into custody, he keeps the cuffs on because that's what makes him feel comfortable. But after a moment, he's just like, screw it, I'm taking control of the situation. And I think that there is this thing about Superman's kindness that people seem to try and dismiss. And people that like Man of Steel, or the Man of Steel version of Superman, are the people that like Batman, and the people that I think don't understand the power within kindness and the real driver behind Superman. And they touch on it with choice, but again, I don't see any point in that film where he's actually making a choice as opposed to having choice foisted upon him.
It's like he does finally, and we can talk about the snap and the when he destroys the scout ship, like when he uses his laser to take down. He's like, it's like, if you destroy the ship, you destroy Krypton. And he's like, Krypton had its choice, or had its chance.
They had their chance.
It's like, so I would say those are at least two definitive. Well, no, because you were talking about his hand being forced. So the Zod one is still Zod forcing his hand. I don't think it's that we dislike our heroes being, well, you know, back in 2013, I would have said, yeah, we don't have a problem for heroes being deconstructed. After Last Jedi, no, I don't. I would tend to agree with that statement to some degree, and/or franchises. And I'm not going to get into ad nauseum of what worked and what didn't work, because Last Jedi is a flawed, good, bad movie. Like, so it is what it is. I enjoy a lot of it, but there's some things they could have, right. But anyway, but so I don't necessarily want to throw out the whole idea of like deconstructing a popular pop culture hero, but you are trying to deconstruct one of the most popular, if not the most popular, pop culture hero of all time, and you win it.
Not ironically. Also, that's no, it's worth saying, because like people have deconstructed Jesus, and when they do it ironically, it can be kind of hilarious. But here,
like
no.
South Park Jesus, like people.
Yes, so like South Park Jesus, or there's a Mexican short film of like zombie Jesus, and then there's jujitsu Jesus in a comic book. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's. But anyway, continue your thought. Yeah. Sorry.
Wow. Sorry, Brant. What?
I lost it.
You lost it. All right. Let me make a note.
Deconstruction.
Even if you're saying this is a realistic version of Superman, you still have to make your point. And I don't think that's what the movie. We can talk about all the things that didn't do well, but what was the point? Like, I can talk about choice all day long, and I can tell you that I'm very clear that it goes back to Zod and Pa Kent. I understand their choices, and Jor-El as well. I understand Jor-El's choices. I understand Pa Kent's choices. I understand Zod's choices. And you can have some argument that Jor-El and Zod were locked into some of theirs because of how their culture had been growing to that point, and the things they're talking about, the past of Krypton. But regardless, like, still, they're making choices based on a few archetypes you can see being like the power giver, or like the person that gives the wisdom off to the hero, the person playing the potentially the foil as far as like powers between Clark and Zod, but they never really communicate what is Clark's point. It's like has he even if it takes him the whole movie to get it, what is it? And like, yeah, again, he makes a choice to destroy the scout ship, but why? It's like, why has he made that choice? We know why other people have been telling him to do it. It's like, well, why has he made that choice?
And you know what? Here, spoiler alert, he never makes that choice. And then we never figure out those choices 3 films in.
Yeah.
It's...
Oh, let it out, man. Let it out.
So I'm going to bring up character development. I've been watching Travelers with my my virus roommate, and we were in episode 3 or season 3, and there was a scene where a whole bunch of people are together for the first time, and we're like, oh, that's David's my favorite character. Nope, Grace is my favorite character. Nope, this is my favorite character. And we just realized that they did such a good job in developing those characters that you're invested in all of them. And that I think is also the biggest sin, is that the biggest character in the film, the titular character of the film, I have no investment in him other than he's the title, right? And we're told that he's the main reason why we're watching this film.
Yeah, it's our pulp culture identity that is, that's filling in the gaps. But then those are also incongruent, right? So going back to the Brandon Routh Superman Returns, you know why that still works and why they don't have to do so much fill in is because it still is within the spirit of that character. Even if, and again, we can talk about different things about that movie, but if you're talking about being a spiritual successor to Reeves, it's like that's still there, and our pop culture knowledge can fill in those gaps, and they can move forward. You can't do that in this movie. You're cut off from doing it. It kind of goes back to the filling in the gaps, or in that connective tissue, and the way you fill in gaps may lead you to a different experience than what I did, but it's still bad if the overall consensus doesn't lead us to an end. Like, so maybe if you perceived it one way and I perceived it one way, that can still be fine if we're still getting to a generalized, this is what the point was. But even though there's not a lot of things you can rotate in and out and try to get to whatever the point was they were trying to make. It's really hard to pull that out for Clark, no matter what you insert.
Agreed. That's really, I think that's really it. And I'll be curious to see how we feel as we go through the rest of them, because I do have feelings, and I'm trying my best to be fair, but at the same time, it's hard not to feel, or hard not to appear like I'm being unfair, because
so mean. How could you?
There's just so much going wrong that, like, anyone who's interested in telling good stories would tell you why it's wrong, or can tell you why it's wrong.
I do want to.
So look forward to the hate on this one.
It's been a couple of years. I don't think we'll get a ton of hate. But you mean our hate? Yeah. Had that in droves. That's what the people need right now. I do want to hit some miscellaneous stuff real quick. So we didn't talk a ton about Russell Crowe because, again, he's not in it a ton, except either as a ghost in the system or in the beginning parts of Krypton. I do think he's fine for what part he needs to serve. The military members running around, like Harry Lennox and Christopher Maloney from the Law and Order series, like they fill their spots out well. Like, again, they don't have a ton of screen time, so it's like they do exactly what they need. What else? We got a Hans Zimmer that gives us another Hans Zimmer score, which I think is perfectly fine in this movie. I still listen to the score, the flight all the time. And the lead into the credits when he's talking about what are you going to do for your day job, it's like still love those moments. Like, so, and the villain score, the hero score, like those are really good. That might. God, I forgot how much lens flare there was in this movie.
There is. You'd almost think it was J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, you wouldn't be dismissed or missed for thinking that. It's like totally understand.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's all I got. So
I'm spent too. Until next week.
If I had to score it though, because I am going to score it when I write this up and maybe record a review for the site, or sorry, review it for the for our YouTube channel. It's one of those. I could say like a 7 out of 10, just as far as like how I enjoyed the movie and what it did right as far as just a movie, but it's hard to ignore adaptation problems, and I try to be very careful when I bring up adaptation problems, because like it's like the same thing for like when you're taking a book onto a movie. When people are like, you should knock them for this because that wasn't in the book, or I'm like, anytime you're changing mediums, I give them a lot of leeway to make the correct cinematic choice, because if you want to talk about Lord of the Rings, we could be here all day about what doesn't match between the books to the screen. So like if that's your leg, you're never gonna have a leg to stand on. It's like, however, spirit I think is the biggest way, and again, that's not always a tangible thing that you can put to, but there are some objective or things we try to do as objectively as possible that work really well. So again, it kind of goes back to the Superman archetype and what does he represent for pop culture. It's like that's a pretty well established. If I'm going to add that into it, definitely would drop it down to like a 5 out of 10. Like I don't want to go any lower than that, because then I think that starts getting into, like I was saying, the cinematography and other things are atrocious, and I just can't say that. So that's where I'd be hovering between those two extremes of either how much am I going to let my knowledge and love of Superman affect it and put it down to a 5, or will I let some of those things go to just be as objective as I can for the movie?
I won't let them go, because I mean, I'm sorry, but when you agree to take on something like Superman, like a couple weeks ago I watched the Ten Commandments. Do you think Cecil B. DeMille was just like, I'll say whatever I want to say? No, that dude like, all right, I'm reading Exodus 15 times before I even start with the script, because that is a timeless, celebrated, everybody knows it piece of subject matter that he cannot get wrong, and he cannot be flippant about it. And it's the same thing with Superman. Like, one of the things that I felt really, I was optimistic about Iron Man when they first announced it, was Jon Favreau was on stage and he's at Comic-Con and said, I'm scared to death of you guys, because Iron Man is beloved by a lot of people that are out there, and there's so much subject matter about Iron Man, I gotta get this right. Whereas in Snyder just said, oh, DC hired me to tell the story of Superman, so I'm going to tell my story of Superman, which was really Frank Miller's story of Superman.
It's accurate.
So with that, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And I'm going to say that is actually the second worst rating I have among the 3.
Second worst.
Yes. It's actually in the middle.
Very interesting. Now we've got a bunch to get through, but that's especially for this little mini trilogy of the Batman Superman.
Yes.
Okay.
So
sneaky.
let's speaking of, what are you watching this week?
Well, So we would recommend if y'all with words.
They're hard.
If you all want to follow along with us with our DCEU watch, we definitely recommend you check out Man of Steel this week. It'll get you caught up with everything that we've done on this podcast episode. Next week we'll be in chronological order, so that means Batman vs. Superman will be the next movie in our entry. So I'll be watching that this weekend in preparation for our next podcast. And along with, if you follow Westworld, season 3, the finale is happening Sunday night, so you can go read my episode recaps to get caught up. Episode 7 was a little delayed for me, had a lot going on this past weekend, but it's coming out coming out today. If you loved Penny Dreadful, if you remember the original series that aired for 3 seasons on Showtime, the new one that's set in LA is speaking on Mexican god lore and the different angels and demons that are involved within their lore. That's coming out, episode 1 came out and was for free on YouTube and on the Showtime app and their website, and episode 2 will come out this weekend, so I'll be on that as well. Cool. And then Tom, you wanted to talk about John Carter.
Yes, so one more Disney fatality at Netflix is John Carter is leaving Netflix. If you want to see campy, ambitious yet somewhat rubbish execution of a fantastical storyline from like the very beginnings of sci-fi era, check out John Carter. It's your last chance on Netflix. If not, you're going to have to go to Disney Plus, unless Disney somehow buries it.
Which I would not be surprised, given how they're treating the vault of Fox movies right now. But
yes,
that's none of my business, though. Okay.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate. Like, there's some part things that get fixed in this movie, but I think there were some people that were like, I've seen that before. I'm like, well, John Carter did it first. There's definitely some interactions and things that happen in that movie that you've seen a million times. You know what? Now that I can't commit to doing more this weekend, but I may want to eventually retouch that and talk about why that movie got shortchanged, or any movie in like the John Carter kind of series has been shortchanged by things that have been taken from it and used elsewhere. Well, folks, that wraps up our Man of Steel recap and our scores and everything on that. And definitely check out everything we got coming out on the website. Follow us everywhere you can. So if there's a medium that you prefer, with the exception of TikTok, I haven't really figured that one out yet, but I might hear pretty soon. But again, you can always listen to us on this podcast wherever podcasts are held.
Sold.
Selling the podcast. If you're selling the podcast, you talk to us. Like, how dare you? And definitely you can check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. So definitely those likes and ads and subscriptions definitely help us out. But until next time, movie nerds, we'll be back next week and with Batman vs. Superman, or Batman v Superman. We'll see ya.